You know how sometimes a legal story just explodes? Seems like everyone's talking about it overnight.
Oh, absolutely. And we are definitely smack dab in the middle of one right now.
Yeah, this $50 million lawsuit against Shannon Sharpe,
Yeah.
the NFL legend, now huge in sports media.
It's really gained traction fast. And the allegations themselves are, well, they're incredibly serious.
Right. So for this deep dive, we're going to be working through an article from URBT News. It gives a pretty good overview, the claims, Sharpe's reaction, the lawyers involved.
Exactly. It lays out the initial picture of this whole developing situation.
And look, our goal here isn't about deciding who's right or wrong. That's for the courts down the line. What we want to do is unpack the basics for you. Get past those big headlines.
Yeah, really dig into what's actually being claimed, what the counter arguments are, and sort of the bigger picture around this case.
Okay, so let's start with the core of the allegations themselves. What does the lawsuit actually say?
Well, the plaintiff, she's identified as Jane Doe in the suit. She's making some extremely serious claims. We're talking multiple instances of alleged rape.
3 specific instances mentioned.
Yeah, that's what the article says, yeah. October 2024 and January 2025. But it's broader than just that.
Okay.
The suit also details alleged threats, psychological abuse, all within what she describes as their relationship.
And this wasn't just like a brief thing. The timeline is longer.
Apparently, yeah. 2 years, the article mentions. Started back in January 2023. They supposedly met at a gym in L.A.
So the lawsuit seems to paint a picture of maybe a relationship starting one way.
And then allegedly changing, becoming something darker, more controlling.
Controlling how? Does it get specific?
It does. The suit includes accusations of physical violence, things like hitting, even choking.
Wow.
And really serious threats alleged too, like threatening her life if she resisted sex or, questioned his loyalty.
That is heavy stuff. And wasn't there something about recording?
Yes. That's another major part of the lawsuit. The claim is that Sharpe recorded sexual encounters without her knowledge, without her consent.
Okay, that brings in a whole other legal dimension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Privacy laws, consent.
Absolutely. Recording someone like that, especially intimate moments without explicit consent, that's legally very problematic in most places.
When you say most places or jurisdictions, that means the specific state laws matter a lot here.
Exactly. Laws on recording consent, privacy, they can differ state by state. Sometimes federal law comes into play too. But the core issue is that lack of consent. It suggests a potential violation of her autonomy. Big legal implications if it's proven.
Okay, so that's the plaintiff side, laid out pretty starkly. How has Shannon Sharpe responded? The article used the word fiery.
Fiery seems about right. Very quickly after the lawsuit hit the news, he was on X, Twitter, with a video. A complete denial, vehement, denied every single allegation.
Didn't hold back then?
Not at all. He called the whole thing a shakedown, said it was an orchestrated attack.
An attack by who? Did he specify?
Yeah, he pointed the finger directly at the plaintiff's lawyer, Tony Busby.
Interesting. So he's framing it as targeted.
Seems like it. And he said he'd defend himself publicly, be transparent about it all.
Open, transparent, and defend myself because this isn't right. That's a strong stance.
It is.
But then again, wouldn't anyone facing accusations this serious issue a strong denial? Does the intensity tell us much at this stage?
That's a really good question. It's kind of expected, isn't it? A strong denial is almost standard procedure in these situations.
So his strategy seems to be deny, but also discredit by focusing on Busby.
That appears to be part of it, yeah, suggesting maybe there are ulterior motives behind the lawsuit itself linked to the attorney.
And speaking of Busby, things got even more complicated with that audio clip, right?
They did. Busby released this very short piece of audio.
And the claim is?
The claim is it's Sharpe's voice. And in the clip, according to the article, he supposedly heard saying he'd choke her if she accused him of manipulation.
Okay, if that's accurate, that sounds pretty bad. Context is obviously key, but still.
Absolutely. But Sharpe's team pushed back hard on that.
How so?
His lawyer, Lanny Bavis, came out swinging, called the recording warped and distorted.
Meaning they think it's fake or edited, taken out of context.
They're definitely challenging its authenticity and presentation, basically saying that's not the real story or it's been messed with. So that recording itself is now a major point of dispute.
Yeah, like you said, a modern he said, she said, but with audio tech and lawyers fighting over it.
Exactly.
Now, something else the article mentioned, a settlement offer before the lawsuit.
Yes. Reportedly, Sharpe offered the plaintiff $10 million to settle things before she filed the suit.
$10 million. That's a lot of money. What do we read into that?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Offering a settlement isn't necessarily an admission of guilt. People settle to avoid, the cost, the publicity, the risk of a trial.
Sure.
But $10 million is a very substantial amount. It could suggest they saw significant risk if it went public or to court.
And she turned it down.
She turned it down, declined the offer, and went ahead with the $50 million lawsuit.
That decision,
Right.
turning down $10 million, seems to say something, doesn't it? Maybe it's not just about the money for her.
That's a very sharp point. It could imply she's seeking something else. Public accountability, maybe? Validation through the legal system. Or perhaps she genuinely believes the damages warrant the higher figure claimed in the suit. It definitely adds complexity to understanding her motivations.
And this isn't happening in a vacuum either. There's another lawsuit mentioned. From New York.
Right. That's another piece of context the article brings in. Back in 2023, a different woman, Michelle Evans, described as an alleged former partner, filed a civil suit against Sharpe in New York.
What were her claims? Similar?
Different focus, mostly. Emotional abuse, defamation. But, crucially, that lawsuit also included an allegation of sexual assault from an argument back in 2010, allegedly.
So this current lawsuit isn't the first time Sharpe's faced serious allegations in court.
Correct. That earlier case, though separate, definitely creates, let's say, a background narrative. It might influence how people view these new claims.
Even though they're separate claims, separate people. It adds a layer.
It provides a broader context. It raises questions maybe about patterns, but, and this is crucial, they remain allegations in both cases. Nothing proven in court yet.
Good point. Okay, let's shift focus slightly to the people involved. Shannon Sharpe himself. He's obviously not just some random guy.
Yeah.
Huge public profile.
Huge. Hall of Fame NFL career, Super Bowls, then this massive second act in media, co-hosting ESPN's First Take, his own podcast network, Club Shay.
Which the article says is worth potentially tens of millions.
Exactly. So he's incredibly well-known, very wealthy. That fame and wealth inevitably mean any allegations like this land under an intense public microscope.
And then there's the plaintiff's attorney, Tony Buzbee. He's also not exactly unknown in legal circles.
No, definitely not. Buzbee has built a reputation, you could say, handling high-profile sexual assault cases, often representing women.
The article mentioned Deshaun Watson.
Yes, he represented, I think, over 20 women in the lawsuits against Watson. Most of those cases settled. He was also briefly involved in a suit against Sean Diddy Combs. So he's very experienced in these kinds of media-heavy battles.
And it sounds like Buzbee himself is becoming part of the story here. Sharpe's team seems to be making accusations about him.
They are. They're basically accusing Buzbee of having this pattern targeting wealthy black men specifically.
How so?
They suggest he uses media pressure, maybe plays on stereotypes to force settlements. They're framing this lawsuit as just another example of that alleged playbook.
Okay, that's one side. But the article presented another view of Buzbee's work.
Right. The counter perspective is that he gives a voice and legal power to women who might otherwise struggle to be heard, especially against powerful figures.
So empowering alleged victims.
From that viewpoint, yes. He's seen as an advocate helping people navigate the legal system when there's a big power imbalance.
So you have these two totally different takes on the lawyer's role, which just adds more complexity. It's not just about Sharpe and the accuser anymore.
Precisely. The lawyers' reputations, their strategies, they become part of the public narrative, too. It shows how perception gets shaped by more than just the core facts alleged in the case.
And the public reaction, as you'd expect, is all over the place, right? Social media must be buzzing.
Oh, definitely. The article touches on it very divided. You've got Sharpe supporters who see this as false accusations, maybe driven by money, or, as his team suggests, an agenda against him.
And the other side.
You have people firmly supporting the plaintiff, seeing it as a fight for justice, someone speaking out against a powerful man, believing her story needs to be heard and taken seriously.
It feels like this case could really touch on those bigger conversations we keep having, you know? Consent, power dynamics in relationships, accountability. Especially with fame involved.
Absolutely. If this does go all the way to a trial, the outcome could really sway public opinion, not just about Sharpe, but about how we as a society view these kinds of allegations against public figures.
It might shift how people think about consent, about power, about believing victims, or about false accusations, depending on how it plays out.
It could influence all of that.
And it's worth repeating what the article noted. So far, no criminal charges have been filed.
Correct. This is a civil lawsuit.
And no court date set yet for a hearing in this civil case.
No. We're still very much in the early innings here. It could be a long process.
So right now, as the article implies, it feels like a lot of this is being fought in the court of public opinion.
That's a very accurate way to put it. Both sides are working hard to shape the narrative, to get their version of the story out there before it even gets properly started in the legal system.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've looked at these very serious allegations, rape, threats, abuse against Shannon Sharpe.
And his immediate strong denial, calling it a shakedown, pointing fingers at the lawyer.
We talk about that disputed audio clip, the rejected $10 million settlement offer.
And the context of that other earlier lawsuit in New York involving different allegations.
We touched on the high profiles involved Sharpe's media empire, Busby's controversial legal history.
And those conflicting views on Busby's motivations and methods.
Plus, the predictably divided public reaction we're already seeing.
Yeah, it's clear this is very much a developing story. Lots of questions still hang in the air about the truth of it all and what's really driving everyone involved. The legal path ahead looks complicated.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About power, fame, accountability. When someone so public faces claims this serious, how do you, as someone following the story, sift through it all? Through the media spin, the legal arguments. It leaves you pondering how justice is sought and perceived when it involves figures in the spotlight like this. What does it mean for how we handle these situations moving forward?